podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Hello and welcome to the 1865 match report. We're recording straight after Forest have held Arsenal to a goalless draw. It was one of those where probably Arsenal would have wanted the 3 points because Manchester City, their chasers, lost earlier today, whereas we really needed the 3 points because West Ham won today, as did Leeds. Now, I'm joined by Steve Burns. How are you feeling after that game?
I think relieved, to be honest. I think we were talking before the game that we would have been happy with the 0-0 draw. So, just pleased that the hard work from the team today actually meant we came away with something this time.
Yeah, not to drop anyone in it, but Tom Newton did say, here's my match report before the game, which was Forest were outdone 5-0, and it could have been many more. So, I think a 0-0, we can be pretty happy with that. We lined up with one change from our last league outing with Ibra Sangare returning from AFCON and taking Amari Hutchinson's place in the side. So that put us in, I thought it wasn't really a 4-2-3-1. It was more a sort of 4-3-3. So we had Sells in goal, Ola Aina, Milenkovic, Murillo and Williams across the back four. Then Sangare, Anderson and Dominguez sort of in the middle with Hudson-Odoi, Igor Jesus and Morgan Gibbs-White playing as a three up front, but everyone was pretty much all over the place. I'd also say probably in defence we were more of a 4-4-2 with Gibbs-White and Jesus up front, and in attack, when we did attack, it was a bit more fluid. But the game started with Arsenal dominating pretty much, kind of what we'd expected. They got an early corner. I drew a very, very deep breath, but they eventually hit the side netting from it. We went on an attack shortly after, but Jesus couldn't get the ball under control after Callum and Anderson combined to put it into the box. And then a little while after that, Dominguez picked out Morgan, but his shot was kind of wide. But it wasn't all Arsenal, but they did come into the game more and more. They got a lot of corners, but we managed to hustle the ball clear. There was a bit where Murillo put in an absolutely amazing pass to pick out Callum, but David Raya got to it first. And then Martinelli wasted probably the best chance of the first half, definitely, putting it wide after a corner. Again, more corners, more deep breaths, but Arsenal kind of dominated the next few minutes, but we kept our concentration. And then a bit later after that, about 35 minutes in, we started to find some space and putting a bit of pressure back onto them. And that actually resulted in a free kick just outside the box. Urian Timber brought down Callum just outside the box. I think it was quite clearly outside the box, but I think they probably had a VAR check for it anyway. Nothing actually came of the free kick, though. And then shortly after that, there's like a high ball. Murillo makes a complete mess of dealing with it, and Gyökeres gets the ball, runs through on goal, but Murillo does his thing of like, well, actually, I might have screwed up, but I'm not going to let you score. And he puts it, Murillo blocks a shot and it goes wide. And that was kind of it for the first half. Not really very much happened, certainly no shots on target. So how did you feel at half time?
Yeah, I think I was relieved. I think what was interesting was looking at how Ben White was. Well, first of all, he didn't seem as orange in real life as I was expecting him to. So I think he'd let his spray tan go. But he was drifting inside and causing that gap between our midfield and back four all kinds of trouble. And I think he could have exploited more of that. But I think you're right. In the first half, we kind of kept Arsenal at arm's length. There was a sense of worry. I mean, you mentioned all the corners that we had. You know, you meet a team who are excelling at the moment in terms of set pieces and a team who are woeful at defending set pieces. And so there was, plenty of sharp intakes of breath every time the corner was given. But we rode the storm in that first half.
And we went in 0-0 at half time.
Yeah, which I was very, very pleased about. I think there was the stadium very much rose to applaud the players off after the interval. So I think they were generally well received all round.
So in the second half, Mikel Arteta chose to replace Martinelli with Leonardo Trossard. I will say that, Ola Aina kept Martinelli completely under wraps. And Nico Williams was up against Noni Madueke, who obviously is very, very fast, but again kept him pretty much under wraps. We'll be talking about those two later on. And Trossard, it's kind of like, well, he's a different type of player to Martinelli. He's not going to run straight at Ola Aina, so I was a little bit worried about whether we might get pulled a bit out of position, but actually he didn't really do much either. The first real chance of the second half falls to Morgan, who, I think it was Callum who put it across, and he's right in the centre of the goal, and he hesitated, and the chance was just completely wasted. But I think it was quite telling. We were growing into the game and looking a lot more confident. In fact, so much so that Arteta made a triple substitution, bringing on Bukayo Saka, Mikel Moreno and Gabriel Jesus. So a Jesus at either end of the pitch. Then probably, I think the first shot on target at 60-odd minutes into the game, where Declan Rice just hammers it and Sells is forced into a save. Then Sells makes another save a little while after. Rice, again involved, puts in the cross. Bukayo Saka heads it back across goal, and I mean, I didn't get a great look at it, but it looked like an amazing save, that one, with his fingertips.
Yeah, I've seen replays of that one, and it was a good header, good contact. And I think to make things even more complicated, Murillo went up to try and head it. It just cleared over his head. So Sells was slightly unsighted with that, but managed to get fingertips to it. So sensational save from him.
I definitely got the impression that having that last year's back four in front of Sells is making a big difference for him. He looked a bit low on confidence earlier this season, but he's looking back to who we know he is.
Yeah, certainly. I think that's probably the best performance we've seen from him this season, without a doubt. But yeah, that was a superb save he made from Saka.
Yeah. Don't like talking about referees, but Ian Wone, I remember him as a player. I don't remember him getting booked, but he seems to get booked pretty much every week now that he's on the touchline. He got booked for a free kick being given in this pretty much in the centre of the pitch. But it was, and I think it was Marino who eventually got the head to it, but he puts it wide, which actually should have been a pretty good chance for Arsenal, but they didn't really take it. And as I say, Wone got booked for complaining. And then came what was actually quite a big surprise was Igor Jesus comes off and he's replaced by Dan Ndoye. Taiwo was obviously on the bench. Taiwo was obviously struggling for form and confidence. But I do remember every time we've played Arsenal with Taiwo up front, they've looked terrified of him. So I was very, very surprised at this. However, I also said to the bloke next to me, maybe it'll work putting Ndoye up front because he's definitely not a winger.
Yeah, I was surprised to see him come on, particularly in that he's not really had much of a showing for the team over the last few weeks. Pretty much locked out the squad, not even on the bench for some of the games. So I was surprised to see him come in up front.
Okay, yeah, and again, we'll talk about him later on. Arteta made his final change. He replaced Zubimendi, who I thought had a really, really good game, cutting us out so that we couldn't do anything when even those spells when we were looking a bit more confident and had more of the ball. But he replaces him with Eze. Bloke next to me goes, "Oh my God, I completely forgot they had him," which says a lot. And they go on the attack. Anderson and Aina sort of combine to clear the ball just to the sort of right of Sells' post. But after the ball's cleared, their thing comes up on the screen saying VAR check for handball. Now, I didn't see anything at all in there. And I didn't notice any of the players complaining about it. Some of the Arsenal fans, because it was just in front of them, were complaining. But the VAR check for handball was not given. I've watched it back since. Have you seen it?
Yeah, so it looks like the ball came off Aina's shoulder and then kind of rolled down his right arm. Um, I think it's one of those ones I wouldn't have been surprised if it was given. I think we probably maybe got away with one there, but the view in terms of VAR was that his arm was in a natural position, and I think we were fortunate there.
I think, having seen it myself, I think Aina couldn't move his arm because Anderson was literally like on top of him. So if he'd have moved him, he'd have punched him in the stomach.
Yeah, and I think it also looks far worse in in slow motion than it does in real time. I think it looks very much like a natural move in real time. Start looking at it in slow motion, then I think we were lucky from that perspective.
Yeah. What else to say? There's Morgan had a very, very weak shot that went wide. There was 5 minutes of injury time. Amari Hutchinson comes on to replace Dominguez because Dominguez he took a bit of a knock and he looked absolutely exhausted towards the end of the game. But I thought he had an outstanding game. And that's how it ended, really. Forest fans were very, very loud in the second half. We could tell we were growing in confidence into the game, not thinking they weren't actually as good as we possibly thought they might have been, and finished the game with us chanting second again, Ola Aina.
The 1865 match report.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Checking off the boxes on your to-do list is a great feeling. And when it comes to checking off coverage, a State Farm agent can help you choose an option that's right for you. Whether you prefer talking in person, on the phone, or using the award-winning app, it's nice knowing you have help finding coverage that best fits your needs. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Yes, guys, how's it going? I hope your show's going well. I wish I was coming on here to speak about a bit more of an eventful game, but it is what it is. I'm sure you guys will take the point, a lot more than we will anyway. But yeah, that game was pretty dire to say the least. Second game in a row where we've drawn 0-0, and to be frank, haven't looked like scoring. And yeah, very uneventful. But look, I think going into this game was definitely made quite a lot bigger by recent results, or the early results today. Obviously, City losing to Man United in the derby, giving us an opportunity to go 9 points clear, which, if we had gone 9 points clear, that seems like a little bit of an unassailable lead at the top. Look, 7 points isn't bad. I'd certainly take it at this stage, and I'm not complaining too much. We are still in a very strong position, but the 9 points would have been, an unbelievable position to be in. I think more mentally than anything else, that extra 2 points would have been vital. But for you guys, I think it's a solid point. Obviously, West Ham beating Tottenham put you right back in it. I'm pretty sure you're 5 points clear now of West Ham, which again, it's okay, but yeah, you're definitely under a lot more pressure given that Tottenham result. But yeah, I think, like I said, there's really not much to talk about in the game. I think we started. First half, I think we were okay. Definitely should have scored. Martinelli had a great chance, should have scored that. His finishing letting us down once again, but there was another decent chance for Zubimendi, but really not much happened in the first half. Second half, I think you were stronger, a lot slightly more offensively promising for you guys, but the talking points of this game, I think the main talking point is probably the penalty the lack of penalty given Aina's alleged handball. I mean, I'm biased. I think that probably is a penalty. Quite soft, given literally nothing's happening, and it's not like he's stopping a goal or anything. He is just trying to see it out for a corner. But it did look very sloppy and rather, it was rather unorthodox from him. But I'm surprised it wasn't given as a penalty. I'm sure you guys are happy it wasn't. But yeah, I guess that's probably the main talking point of the game. Like I said again, really, really uneventful. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed that one a bit more than I did. But yeah, have a good one, guys.
Yeah, I can sort of see his point of view. From their point of view, it must have been pretty awful. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, the main thing to talk about is that penalty shout. We both said, yeah, it is the sort of thing. I will be honest. I just don't understand handball anymore. I don't understand a lot of the rules anymore. But yeah, it's just, it definitely touched his arm. But yeah, it's that whole thing of intent and natural position and all that kind of thing. As I said, I thought Anderson being there kind of changed everything for what Ola could do with his arm, no matter what. So I'm very happy it wasn't given, because the other thing to say, I think if it had been given, it would have felt very, very unfair given the performance we'd been putting in.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's much like with the Man City game. I felt that we put enough effort into that one on the 30th of December that we should have come away with a point, and I thought we were good enough for a point in that game, and I think it would have felt very similar to that walking away from the City ground if we'd had a narrow, 1-0 loss. And I think probably makes it worse as well if it comes from a penalty. So yeah, I think we were fortunate with that. So glad to see that didn't get awarded a penalty through VAR.
So the official player of the match was Elliot Anderson. Do you agree with that one?
Yeah, I think there's 3 or 4 players that could easily have got it today. I think Nicholas Dominguez, who you mentioned as well, he just worked his socks off today. I was a little concerned when I saw the lineup. I thought it was going to be somewhat lopsided with having Dominguez in there, but he was just like a terrier. He was all over the pitch. And just snapping at the Arsenal players left, right, and centre. Like I say, Anderson looked good. I thought that him having the rest at Wrexham did in the world of good. So he looked a bit more his usual self, again in terms of being able to play the ball out from places you don't even think he should be able to get it, let alone let alone escape with the ball. Nico Williams, again, I think he was a candidate for man of the match. Was tireless. And was getting fouled left, right, and centre by Arsenal players. I don't know how they escaped with so few yellow cards to get through that game. But again, he put in a shift. And as we said earlier, I think Sal's probably had his best game of the season too. So I think there's a number of candidates there that I would have been quite happy if they'd have been awarded the man of the match.
Yeah. Before the game, I was talking to the bloke who sits next to me about Morgan, and it's really weird what he's such an all-action player. He covers every blade of grass. He obviously puts in a lot of work, but there's when the side's struggling, he's the player we look to make things happen. And when the side's struggling, all his little flicks and passes and stuff, none of them seem to come off, and it must really frustrate him as much as it frustrates us.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a stat earlier on in the season saying he was the player in the Premier League that had given away the ball the most. And again, I don't think today would have done anything to have improved his standing in that statistic. There was a ball in the first half played to feet. He turned straight into a player and lost it. A couple of simple passes that he played out, given straight away to Arsenal players. You mentioned the shot on the edge of the box where he just paused and then decided not to, almost decided to cut inside on himself and lost the ball. The scuff shot as well, where Declan Rice was closing him down. So there's a number of moments where you would have expected his quality to come through today, but it just seemed that nothing that he did today really came off, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I kind of I'll talk about the tactics in a little while, but I kind of wonder if it's almost like the way we played under Nuno, where he would suddenly pick up the ball and then have acres of space to run into. That really suited him, and now that we're playing a slightly different way, where actually we do tend to hold the ball in the opposition half a little bit more. He's getting crowded out almost, and you'd hope he'd be able to adapt to that, because a number 10 who has hopes of playing for England, is going to need to be able to deal with that.
Yeah, and I think there was signs last season where he would get the ball in tight places, and he would be able to come away with the ball. You know, we used to joke that he could find space in a phone box with an elephant, but we're not seeing that at the moment. And again, I don't know whether the opposition have got wise to that, and they're snapping in quicker on him, giving him less time. But there's just something that's not quite right about the way he's playing at the moment.
Yeah, I did think he was limping quite a bit in the second half as well, though.
Yeah, I think that's quite likely. I mean, he certainly got kicked a couple of times throughout the game, but I mean that doesn't explain how the performance in the first half was maybe off from the standard we'd expect from him. I mean, certainly there's a player in there. We've seen it before. We've seen the way that he can turn games around. And certainly hope it's something that he can play his way back into form.
The other thing, there was a couple of things that I'd like also to mention. Igor Jesus and Dan and Doy. Igor Jesus, he works so hard. He wins all these headers that he has no right to win. He was being pulled all over the place by Saliba today. But he just can't quite seem to get into position to score a goal. And it must be frustrating for him as much as as it's frustrating for us, but it's frustrating for him. It must be.
Yeah, I mean, there was that well-used graphic that was going around from a couple of games ago with Igor Jesus on the ball, being surrounded by 6 players and no other Forest player in sight. And tactically, I don't think Dyche has worked out yet how to actually link that midfield through to the strikers. And certainly in terms of, he didn't have a shot on goal at all. The majority of his work, like you said, was holding the ball up, being pulled to the ground by the defenders, and trying to flick the ball off where he could. But there's something needs to be worked on there in terms of giving a striker, whether it's him or any other of the players we decide to put in that position, an opportunity to strike the ball on goal, because we're just not getting that opportunity at the moment.
However, one thing I will as I said, Morgan was limping in the second half. I wonder if maybe he's carrying an injury. Full stop. But Dyche is like, well, we haven't got anyone else who can play there. I do remember reading when we signed Jesus that actually he's a number 10, and he was getting like 7 or 8 goals a season because he's not an out and out striker. So I'm wondering if we had another striker, maybe it would be Dyche would trust Jesus to take Morgan's place, whereas he obviously doesn't trust James McAtee to play there now.
No, and I think that's a disappointment for me in that I kind of saw McAtee coming in as the heir to the throne for the number 10 position, but he's certainly not shown enough in the opportunities he's been given so far.
The 1865 Match Report.
Every day at Sierra, you'll find top brand apparel, footwear, and gear for 20 to 60% less than department and specialty store prices. And during clearance time at Sierra, those incredible prices are 40 divided by 2.5, carry the 1, even lower. And when you shop clearance at Sierra, you can save a whole lot more on everything you need to get active and outside. That's a lot of saving. Epic brands, vast selection, teeny tiny prices. That's Sierra. Visit your local Sierra store today or shop online at Sierra.com.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Speaking of Sean Dyche, I will say I think this is probably the first game with him in charge of us where I've seen a change in tactics. So like when we played against Liverpool under Nuno, and we started off with 4 central midfielders, then waited for the game to start getting stretched, and then put on the wingers, which is where the goal came from. That idea of having a plan where we change what we do as the game progresses and in response to things that happened, I've not really seen that from Sean Dyche so far, apart from today. I thought putting Dan and Doy on was very, very interesting because it was, given the lack of options we kind of have up front, it did give their defence something different to think about. And then when we were starting to pull back and get drawn deeper and deeper right towards the end of the game, putting Amari Hutchinson on, although Dominguez had run himself into the ground, I thought Hutchinson was exactly the right choice, because they would then start being worried about getting hit on the break a little bit, and he could obviously carry the ball a little bit better. So again, it was actually a tactical choice to do that, which I don't think I've really seen from Sean Dyche so far.
Yeah, I thought, I was slightly puzzled when Ndoye came on. I mean, he didn't really have much of an opportunity to do anything once he was on the pitch. He wasn't on for a huge amount of time, to be honest. And didn't really get a lot of service as well. We did seem to be defending extremely deep from that point of when he came on. I thought Hutchinson did stretch the game a bit more. Certainly had a good opportunity down on the advance down the right wing, which unfortunately came to nothing. But I don't know in terms of Dyche and his substitutions. I think he doesn't trust his bench. I think that's one of the things that seems to be very clear at the moment. He doesn't feel he's got the quality and depth there that he can to, change the game. And when you compare that with Arsenal, who bring on Saka and Eze, it's just like frightening when you see that kind of level of talent coming off the bench at you. It'll be interesting to see what happens during this transfer window. I certainly hope there'll be one or two more players coming in that Dyche feels he can really trust.
Yeah, definitely, especially up front and probably at fullback as well. Because I dread to think what would happen if Ola gets injured again or we lose Nico.
Yeah, I think that goes without saying, really. But, I mean, to be honest, I'd have kittens if we lost either Milenkovic or Murillo to that point.
Absolutely,
as well.
yeah.
I don't think Morato's really the player that we want deputising in at the moment. So.
Yeah, but I mean, having said that, like sort of ended on a bit of a downer there. But actually, what was great was the performance levels today were really, really good. We couldn't really create much against them, but Arsenal are very good defensively, so we can't complain too much about that. They are top of the league for a reason. So overall, I was actually quite pleased with how things went today.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. This is we're probably playing against one of the top teams in Europe at the moment. Top of 9 points, 7 or 8, 9 points clear at the top of the Premier League now. Going well in Europe, strength and depth throughout their squad. Actually looking like the real deal this season, and for once, at this stage, we'll say the favourites for winning the Premier League, and we went toe to toe with them. Didn't really create much, but at the end of the day, we managed to come away with a clean sheet and a very, very important point.
So yeah, I completely agree. So I'd like to say thank you to Sydney for the view from the Arsenal end. I'd like to say thank you to you, Stephen, for joining me. And I'd like to say thank you to you, listener, for being here with us. We'll be back later this week with Yatesy's Espresso Bar, and we'll also have a report from Portugal where we go back to work in the Europa League. And don't forget, speaking of Europe, we've also got our UEFA Cup review from 30 years ago available for you to listen to. So until next time, come on you Reds.
You've been listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and leave us a review. It helps other listeners find our content.